I'm Josh Copeland, Director of R&D at Cane Creek Cycling Components, and this is the DBAir. So these are the parts in the DBAir. This is every part that's in the assembly. Put all these things together and it becomes the DBAir shock. A lot of the parts are shared between the DBAir and the double barrel coil shock. Specifically, all the parts in the reservoir are actually identical. The cylinder head itself is identical, and the valving associated with the check valves is the same. But once you get into the things that actually dictate the feel of the shock, the tuning, those are all unique to the DBAir. So the high-speed adjusters, the low-speed adjusters, the springs that control the high-speed poppets, all the way through the damper tubes, shim stacks on the main piston. The main piston is unique to the DBAir, all the seals, and of course by the time you get into the air spring components and the air spring seals, they're of course unique to the DBAir. The two or three main components of the air spring are there's an inner air can, an outer air can, and an end eye, and those things together form the air spring. And one thing that's interesting about the DBAir from a tunability standpoint is this, without the end eye, would actually stay on the shock because it's threaded onto the damper shaft, but the outer air can will slide off, and then we have volume adjustment spacers that sit in between the outer can and the inner can for changing the profile of the air spring, the force displacement curve, so you can either have it more rampy or more linear, and then quickly slide it back on and your adjustment is complete. So one of the unique design features of the double barrel that we incorporated from the original concept was making it easy for the air seals to be rebuilt without getting into the damping portion of the shock. The double barrel doesn't need as much service as some other shocks in the industry, but obviously the air seals will need more service and attention than will the oil seals, and so we made it possible for all of the air seals to be rebuilt. This is the main piston, and it's removable by 3 bolts. So as that gets pulled off, all of the air seals can get pulled off the shock, replaced and rebuilt without opening up the damper, and that's something that will be very straightforward for a service center to take care of. The double barrel air shock will come in 9 different sizes, from 2 inches of stroke all the way up to 3.5 inches of stroke, and the various eye-to-eye links to accommodate those strokes. And it has a pretty large main air piston and a pretty large air volume, and so we'll operate at a lower air pressure than most other shocks that people are used to running. However, this caters very well to the wide damping adjustment available in the double barrel, so even at low air pressures that would seemingly maybe be a little bit too slow on rebound, the extra adjustment range in the double barrel accommodates for this. That tunability combines very well with the air spring in this shock to complement each other. Price-wise, the double barrel air is going to be right there with the double barrel coil. It's not really a price-based decision that we wanted people to make on these between the double barrel coil and the double barrel air. It was strictly a performance-based decision. So some bikes are better suited to air shocks, which makes the decision obvious. Some bikes or some riders really would prefer their bike to be more progressive in the spring rate, and the double barrel air or a DBAir would be a better choice in those circumstances. And some people are just going to always prefer that linear feel that a coil provides. So we really didn't want to make the price the decision factor. It was really what sort of feel do you want out of the damper.